best and most beautiful part of this whole entire process was watching them hold their baby. I didn't do this to have another child, to form another relationship. I did this for two people who, without somebody's help, it didn't have to be mine, but without somebody's help, they were unable to have the little guy that is now their son. There's a super special picture of right after his delivery and his mom getting to do skin to skin. I didn't wish that was me. Like, I did have a C-section with him. And so they were able to be in the room, which was super special. My husband was at my head and they were down here at the corner. And that was important to me for them to be a part of that process. But, they got handed him first. And the first thing that she did was walk him around to my side of the curtain. And I got to see him and tears streaming down her face. And she gave me the biggest hug. And that's what it's about. That's what it's about.
Do you have questions about surrogacy? A lot of people do. And so today I'm going to try to clear that up for you. Years ago, I testified before the New York State Judiciary Committee to legalize compensated surrogacy in New York. And at the time, I was really surprised that there were still objections to this process that seems so loving and so wonderful. And I've seen so many families really benefit from this beautiful process. And yet it continues to be an issue. There continue to be objections that are basically unfounded. And today I'm going to share with you why. You're going to meet somebody who was an egg donor, a surrogate, and now runs an egg donor agency. And she's going to share with you personally what it's like to be a surrogate, what it feels like, how relinquishment feels so good, how the process feels so good, and how the relationships really develop to be beautiful, beautiful connections. From our Building Your Family community, this is the Building Your Family podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Schumann, author, researcher, and reproductive medicine therapist. As the leading destination for support and education for people using reproductive medicine to grow their families, we cut through the noise to provide you with research-based information, effective and actionable strategies, and the support that you need to feel better, so you can get into the driver's seat of your life and build the family of your dreams. We look forward to seeing you inside. Welcome to a new episode of the Building Your Family podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. And today we're going to talk primarily about surrogacy. We're going to talk about egg donation also, but primarily surrogacy. This is such an important topic to clear up. There is so much misinformation out there, and although legally we can have surrogates carry for us in almost every state, and there's so many more people using surrogacy, it's still very, very difficult for people to understand what a surrogate feels, what the system is like, how ethical it really is in the United States, and what you really need to know when you're going through this. So on my platform, on the Building Your Family community, you will find a lot of information about that. In fact, I have a whole course on it and lots of downloadable material, chat rooms, and all sorts of things. So check out the Building Your Family community, and I will be so excited to see you inside. And for today, I'm going to introduce you to someone who's going to give us lots of helpful information on this topic. Her name is Katie Enkelade, and she will share with you information that's so valuable because she's been an egg donor, she's been a surrogate, and she also works in the industry. She runs her own agency, and she's going to tell you all about it. So welcome, Katie. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me on. I'm really excited to get to talk with you today.
So why don't we start at the beginning, how you decided just from day one to be an egg donor, because that's how this started, right?
I always tell people I was an egg donor a million years ago, and it feels that way. When I was in college, I was volunteering in spaces that led me to think, what happens with people that are unable to easily get pregnant and grow their families? And I learned about egg donation. So I chose to be an egg donor when I was in college now, well, almost 20 years ago was when egg donation came into my world. I felt like it was a really cool way to help somebody. You've been in this industry, I think even longer than I have. So egg donation looked a whole lot different 20 years ago
Yes, yes.
than it does now. We've made great strides around known and some of those things, but I was, quote, an anonymous egg donor back then. Had a really good experience, was excited that I was able to help somebody in that way. Then I went on, I got a job in the industry, just helping match families once I graduated, and then went on to have 3 kiddos myself. I always say I had simple, easy pregnancies. And I remember that this sounds crazy. I was like walking through TJ Maxx and I was like, I think I could probably be a surrogate. And I called my husband and I said, I think I should probably be a surrogate. And he said, you want to be pregnant again? And I said, yeah, why not? There are so many families that need someone just willing to help. I didn't have crazy pregnancies. I will say I'm not the person who says, I loved being pregnant. It was great. When people ask me why I chose surrogacy, I really say because I could. And I really believe that there are people that can step up and help in this way. And that's what
Hmm.
we're called to do because I've learned just being a mom. When I had my first son, I had 5 really good friends. We all had babies at the exact same time within 3 months of each other. And we were the only ones who conceived naturally between IVF, Clomid, other things. We were of 5, which, they do say 1 in 6, but in my
Yes.
experience, it was only 1 out of 5 that was able to. So we've learned that in the surrogacy world, that there's often women who want to help but can't just because of their own health history or the pregnancies that they experience. So I chose to be a surrogate because I could and wanted to help in that way. The little guy I carried will be 10 at the end of this
Wow.
month. And it seems really crazy. His family's coming here at the end of the month where we get to celebrate.
Wow.
I did a special trip with my kids every time they turned 10. And so his mom is taking him on a special trip. And she said, we want to come to Dallas to see you. So it
Oh,
has most certainly come full circle. And just grateful that that's a part of our story.
that's fantastic. That's beautiful. So let's just back up for a moment. So when you started this whole process, when you started to think, I want to be an egg donor, just to start, were you thinking, like, I want to help somebody, I'm in college and I can use, a little extra money and I'm not really concerned about leaving my genetics with another family, because some people wonder about that, right? They wonder if their donors are going to feel that connection, or the donors are going to worry about that, or that the donors don't even think about it at all. So, can you just tell us a little bit about that? I know we're going to talk mostly about surrogacy, but I think that's really helpful for people to know.
Yeah, so I will say the education that was done 20 years ago is not what we are doing now. I
Hmm.
remember I did have a, traditional mental health evaluation. I remember her saying, how do you think your kiddos will feel one day? I got married pretty young. I was married, so my husband was a part of that conversation and he was comfortable with it as well. At that time, I probably didn't weigh what it means genetically. I have later weighed that. And we, as an agency, and of course, partner with great mental health professionals like yourself, who are doing a lot better job asking those questions to
Hmm.
donors now than was almost
A
20
long
years
time
ago.
ago.
And so all of my children know, like, I helped a family. We don't use the word half sibling or anything like that. But I guess if someone was to really say, I guess that is what it is. But I did donate in a fashion that I do not have a connection with the family that I helped. I know some basic
Hmm.
information. I've made myself available should their kiddos be curious, because I believe that that's a really important part of this process. My personal story is not having that connection and having those relationships. But I do know and feel it's really important that if someone chooses to be a donor, that they need to be open to answering questions and being
Yes.
available should a child be interested one day. And so that's it's not the reality that I live, but it's the reality that I hope people 20 years from now most certainly will. And should that door ever need to be open, then I'm open and willing.
So your experience as an egg donor was positive enough for you to say, okay, I want to work in this industry.
Yes, it was. It was a good experience. So I was a marketing major and I went to work in the space. The agency that I was with didn't have a Dallas program. And so about 3 years later, I opened our egg donor program in Dallas and realized the things that I wanted to do in order to make sure that we were doing this ethically, that we were having the right conversations. I remember being in spaces where, like, I did not know I was supposed to give myself injections. Now, shame on me for not doing the research better,
Well, how would you know?
but also, like, why did the agency tell me that I was going to
Yes.
have to do injections? And so,
Right.
that has been really important to me. And, when we have families that come to us, they also say, how does the donor know what she's doing? And I'm the first to say, because a lot of our team have been egg donors and we explain that process. And I think people understanding what they're getting into, this is not a quick way to make money. This is not simple and easy. You know as well as I do that maybe it actually used to be simpler than it is now, but it's a 4 to 6 month commitment that a woman makes in making herself available in this time and process. And it's inconvenient and they're going to miss school and they're going to miss work and there can be complications to medications and retrievals. And so we believe that education is really, really important. So went on that track. Then once I chose to be a surrogate, a couple years after that, the agency that I worked with at that time was Surrogate Solutions. I owned and operated Egg Donor Solutions. And when she was
Hmm.
given the opportunity to partner with someone else, she said, but would you like to step into this space and help lead through our surrogate program instead? And so then I ended up acquiring our surrogacy program in 2017.
I'm wondering how you felt because lots of people wonder about the experience of an egg donor. And you're saying that you felt positively about being an egg donor and so positively that you wanted to be in the industry and eventually wanted to be a surrogate. So I think people wonder about the motivations of donors and what it feels like to be a donor. So what was that like for you knowing that you're helping another family and why was it important enough for you to keep going?
I think I felt like it was important to help a family because it comes back a little bit to the surrogacy that I mentioned before, because I could help in that way
Hmm.
and make a difference. Compensation was not then what it is now. So I can't say that there was like this huge financial motivator that there was before, but it's something that I'm glad I did. Really, I don't want to use the word regret, but really my only thing is I believe so heavily that kiddos should have access that I regret the fact that in the way that I donated, I haven't been able to fulfill that piece. To be honest, that's really my only regret in the process. And I trust that that will work itself out in a day when
Yeah.
that's hopeful.
And the industry has changed. I mean, that was your only option at the time.
Education has changed and what we know now has as well.
So you felt like, okay, I want to do this. That was just something that felt right for you. And then what was the surrogacy process like for you being a surrogate?
So I entered in that same way. Since I worked in the industry, the first thing I said to Gail, who owned Surrogate Solutions at the time, I was like, just get me a great family. So the family that I got matched with was not here locally to Dallas, they're in Houston. And we always say it was the best thing our family has ever done. So my kids were like
Wow.
3.5, 5, and 6 at the time. I said I wanted to be matched with somebody that we had some common interests, but knowing that I was a busy person as a business owner, I had 3 small kids. I went into the process to help, not realizing the bond and the personal and emotional connection that would come on the end of it. So I think a lot of surrogates walk into this experience really expecting that. I didn't know. I didn't expect that. And Kendall and I have shared our experience over the years in different platforms. And we both say, like, our relationship really came after her son was born because it was a hard journey. We got pregnant really easily, but we had some complications in the pregnancy, and they had suffered a whole lot of loss. And so it
Mm.
was hard to come to that place that this is like real and he's going to be here and he's going to be a part of their family. And so it really wasn't until after he came that we developed a friendship. But my family, we went on to foster kiddos.
Oh, wow.
They played an integral role in that. She has a foster agency, and my husband and I like volunteered, drove down to Houston and would volunteer with them on the regular.
Mm.
When we took placements, she was a support for me and a sounding board that no one else really could be. Um,
Wow.
and so we had a friendship and a bond that was formed not over the fact that I carried her son. And if we go into public, we're just friends.
Mm-hmm.
We don't say who we are and how we're connected.
Mm-hmm.
We went to a conference together about a year after he was born. And how do y'all know each other? Oh, we're just friends. And I really cannot imagine our life without them. We wish we got to see them more, but we're 5 hours away. That was a process that was formed, but the relationship that has grown from it, and what it has taught my kiddos, and how I always say what my daughters will reflect on this process in 20 years when they're building their own families, like, whoa, I think it'll make an impact in their lives as well.
So I have a few questions about that because I've been
Sure.
answering questions on social media about surrogates. And now, having been a surrogate yourself, you know
Mm-hmm.
firsthand, certainly you know professionally, but firsthand, you know what this feels like.
Yeah.
Lots of people think, well, the surrogate is going to give birth and then she's going to feel that her heart's ripping out because she has to relinquish this baby. And even though, we know that typically we don't use the same genetics for the person who's carrying right anymore. Traditional surrogacy was like that years ago. But even so, there is this misconception out there. And I've seen it, as recently as a month ago on the internet, where people are talking about how upsetting it is for the surrogate to have to go through this. So, can you speak to what it really feels like, Katie?
Best and most beautiful part of this whole entire process was watching them hold their baby. I didn't do this to have another child, to form another relationship. I did this for two people who, without somebody's help, it didn't have to be mine, but without somebody's help, they were unable to have the little guy that is now their son. And so there's a super special picture of right after his delivery and his mom getting to do skin to skin. I didn't wish that was me. Like, I did have a C-section with him. And so
Mm-hmm.
they were able to be in the room, which was super special. My husband was at my head and they were down here at the corner. And that was important to me for them to be a part of that process. But, they got handed him first. And the first thing that she did was walk him around to my side of the curtain. And I got to see him, and tears streaming down her face. And she gave me the biggest hug. And that's what it's about. It
Mm-hmm.
that's what it's about. And I guess there could be surrogates that come into this process differently, but I don't really talk to them. Most of my experience of people, they don't feel that way. They know that the number one goal is for that family to have their baby. It's not a
Yes.
giving. We say, like, it's not a giving up. It's a giving back. Like, held them tight, did my job for those 9 months, and now it's their turn. And maybe I'm sure there are people in this world that just feel differently about, either it could be like their experience in childbirth, maybe. So I think people can have that different experience. And I would just say surrogacy is not for them. If a surrogate's
Mm-hmm.
going to walk away from this experience feeling like they've lost a part of themselves, then I wouldn't say that surrogacy is a good thing for them to do. I think you do have to
Yes.
go into it with the mindset of like, I'm helping somebody. This is not mine. I'm just here as a vessel to help this family.
Yes. And that's what I see with most surrogates. They feel the same way. They feel like that moment watching the intended parent's face after the baby's born is such an incredible experience. I hear that over and over again, as I'm sure you do
Yeah.
too. And yet it's so hard, I think, because maybe people assume that it's like an adoption where
Right.
someone is emotionally, genetically, and legally tied to this baby. And then they have to place it with another family. And that's a very different experience than an
It is.
intentional plan from the beginning to place this baby who's not genetically connected to you with another family. It's a whole different experience.
Right. Exactly. It is.
Right?
I talked
Yeah.
to a family, it was not too long ago, and it was from an egg donor perspective. And they said, we're trying to decide if we want to go the egg donor route or if we want to foster to adopt. And I said, okay, I'm stepping out of my lane a little bit as a foster parent. But like, those are not the same things. Like, egg
Right.
donation, surrogacy, foster, adoption, all of those things, they're all wonderful ways to build your family. And in some of those spaces are a great way to help and contribute, but they're not the same. And you have to have a totally different mindset walking into the process. And I think it's important for people to realize that when they're making the decision to be a surrogate. Also, I will say
Yes.
surrogates should be done building their families. So we as an agency enforce that. That's a standard in the industry that sometimes people can sway from, but my personal stance is they should be done building their families. And my family we had 3 kids in 4.5 years, and I didn't need to bring another baby home. I was
No.
very excited. And so I think that's a component too. Like, both if someone's single, then just her, but if she's in a relationship, like, everybody needs to know, like, we're done building our family. So there shouldn't be that longing to be a mom again or bring another baby home. I think people knowing that would be helpful in that decision as well.
Hmm. Imagine your beautiful future. You're snuggling with your child. You feel so connected to them. Your friends and family are so happy, and you have everything that you've ever wanted. I want this for you too, but I want more than that. I want you to feel secure knowing that you've made the best decisions, not just short term, but long term for your future family. Wherever you are on your journey, whether you're choosing a donor, choosing a clinic, learning how to talk to your donor conceived child about their origins, all of these decisions will have wider implications for your future. And I want you to have the right resources so you can feel empowered and confident at this very important time in your life. That's why I'm so excited to introduce you to Building Your Family. It's the only expert-guided platform designed for parents and parents-to-be using reproductive medicine. We provide unique strategies that you won't find anywhere else to make your path to parenthood smoother and more informed. And that's why our approach is about offering practical and actionable steps that you can use right now. Whether you're just starting out or already deep into your process, Building Your Family is here to guide you with expert advice, specialized education, stress reduction strategies, and a community to support you every step of the way. We can't wait to see you inside. And what about your husband? How did he feel about you doing this? Because even though, most people have uncomplicated pregnancies and don't really worry about it, there are still potential problems, and there are still some people who have serious issues or can even die in
Mhm.
childbirth. And so, was your husband concerned at all about your health or about your well being? And you're a mom, you've got kids. Did you have any thoughts about that when you were doing it?
So he was very comfortable with me being a surrogate, and the fact of helping in that way. My pregnancies were fine. Like I said, I did end up having a C-section, and that was expected based on some of my previous pregnancies. We had a support system. Both my parents and his parents lived close to us. We had our kiddos figured out, if there was a complication. Like I said, I did have a complication. Here in Texas, there's ice cream called Bluebell, and it's a very popular ice cream. And their factories ended up with listeria. And
Oh, wow.
I was 22 weeks pregnant when I got a call from my local grocery store that said, you guys bought this contaminated ice cream. And I will be honest in saying, I always knew why. I was always like, you don't eat lunch meat and you don't eat all these things, but I didn't know the disease associated with it. So what is the first thing I do? I'm like, what is listeria? What is listeria in pregnant people? And I was like, and I realized 5 days prior that I had eaten this ice cream and I had gotten really, really sick. I remember eating
Wow.
it because I tried to eat it when all my family wasn't home because I didn't want to be judged for eating ice cream while being pregnant. So I knew exactly when I had eaten it. And
Mhm.
I realized I was sick for 5 hours about 5 or 6 days earlier. So I
Oh my
immediately
gosh.
called my doctor, went to see an MFM. I was hospitalized. I was put on IV antibiotics. And I was sitting at a hospital and knowing that I was going to need to wait there. We were not at viability at that time. And that was a hard time because I thought, oh my gosh, like I was supposed to protect and take care of this little baby. And I ate stupid ice cream. And now here we are. His parents were so gracious and so trusting. And she called and she said, we are here. We will come take care of the kids. We will do whatever needs to be done. And
Mm,
we know that you are making the same choices for our baby that you would make for your own. And the trust that was
nice.
already built and that continued through that really propelled. Now they did send me some gift cards to like Dairy Queen and some other fun ice
Mhm.
cream places for the rest of my pregnancy. But, we had that. So then we had 18 weeks of wondering, okay, is he going to be healthy? What is this going to look like?
So stressful.
Mm-hmm. It is, but it's part of it. It can be, I guess I should say, it can be part of that process. And the
Yeah.
relationship that we built and the support that we had from family, friends, and our agency obviously made a difference there. But so I would say, so then when I wanted to do it again, he was like, are we going to be healthy? Is everything going to be okay? And I think
Mm.
that had been kind of my one last C-section. And my OB told me like, ooh, it's a little thin there. And so when I said, can I please do this again? He was like, no, we did this once
Mm.
when we knew there were no added risks. I would have been willing to get pregnant my own and have a fourth kiddo if I wanted to. And when my OB told me no, I asked her, well, what if we wanted a fourth kid? Would you let me be pregnant then? And she said, no, Katie, I told you. And I was like, okay, all right, that's fine.
Mm.
Because if you're fine with me not, I always felt like that risk should be the same. Like if she felt like I was
Yes.
okay being pregnant for myself, why wouldn't I be okay being pregnant for somebody else? But when she said like, no,
Mhm.
no, no, I don't want you having any more babies, then I said, okay, I understand that. But prior to that, he was really supportive and he enjoys a great relationship with their family as well.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Well, of course, he's your husband.
Yeah.
You would expect no less, right?
Yes.
So
Correct.
that's
Correct.
wonderful. But I think that, what's really important for everyone out there to pay attention to is that you're saying, Katie, if you were able to be a surrogate another time, you would have done it because it was a positive experience for you.
Correct. Yeah. It really was. I mean, I was on the operating table asking, could I do this again?
Wow. So what was the best part?
I think delivery day was the best part because it was the culmination of all the heartache and wait and time. And they had their baby. And it wasn't even just them. Both of their parents came up and were sitting in the waiting room waiting.
Oh,
Both of their moms wrote me just the sweetest note about the gift that was given to them as well. And it was
beautiful.
more than just them being parents. It was grandparents. Even some of their siblings came up. So aunts and uncles got to come meet them as
Wow.
well. And so it was just really wonderful knowing that we were helping in a way, even beyond just them, but their whole entire family.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's so fantastic. And there's a couple of other things that I'm wondering about. So one of them is that very often people will ask their gestational carrier to pump for them, pump breast milk or colostrum or both. So how were you feeling about that question at the time?
so I'll answer that in two ways. I was super comfortable pumping. I personally wasn't comfortable actually nursing. That was hard enough to do with my own kids, much less have someone else's child yelling and screaming at me while I'm trying to get, it was
Mhm.
not, me nursing was something that I felt like was something that I should do, but it was not an easy experience, I will say personally. But with my third kiddo, I had to pump because she had latching problems, but then she had food allergies. And so I pumped for almost 11 months for her almost
Wow.
exclusively. So I knew that I could pump for them. However, I didn't end up pumping for them because they were so far away. She actually had a sister that had had a baby and some people that were shipping milk at that time. It was like $400 to just ship it overnight.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
it was just a lot. But there was another family that a surrogate with our agency was delivering at the same hospital like 3 days later, and she did not want to pump. So I actually pumped for another couple, and it was a gay couple in Louisiana. So I actually shipped to them, which is really special too, because I still get to keep up with them. But I
Wow.
remember the nurse coming and telling me, she said, I am so glad you are pumping because pumping helps to alleviate postpartum. And she said, so the chemicals that your body naturally produces, this is really, really great that you're choosing to pump. And I know surrogates who choose to pump and donate to a milk bank.
Bank.
Um,
Mhm.
I think more do than not, but for me, it's just my story, but it just seemed like part of the process. It seemed easier for milk to come in and pump for a little while and naturally wean than to I mean, that's of course my own opinion. It seemed actually overwhelming to not. It seemed easier to just do
Wow.
it because that was the experience that I'd had 3 times before. So, but I'm
Wow.
glad I was able to pump for them for quite a few months. Did the storage and shipping and all of the things.
Wow.
And they looked up and they said, okay, we have way more milk than we feel like we can use. Are you ready to be done? And I will say, I was like, yep, I can be done because it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but I'm glad I was able to do it and help another family as well.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think what we're seeing in you, Katie, is I think what you also see in the surrogates that you work with is that there's this love for helping people and a generosity of heart that I think is really hard sometimes for people to understand because if they're not the sort of person who feels that they could do this, and not everybody could do it. Not everybody feels like they're up for it. Maybe they're generous in different ways in their lives, but they don't feel like they can imagine doing something like this. It's hard for them to appreciate how somebody can really feel this way. But I think it's pretty typical that surrogates feel this way and feel so generous in their heart about the pumping, about caring, about all of it, right?
That is most certainly the experience that I have had. And that is a question like, who chooses to do that? But I think some of it is just other people's experience in pregnancy that they say, oh my goodness, there's no way I would do that again to have my own child, much less for someone else.
Right.
So, I mean, I
Yes.
think I think more than anything, that's the component. Like pregnancy is not easy and it's not easy on a lot of people. So I think people just don't choose in that way. And
Hmm.
then there is, I guess, the emotional side of it as well. But I believe if someone has the right intention going into the process of I am helping someone, I am giving to someone, then there isn't that loss at the end. I mean, my family did get a dog, but we did end up with sweet Stella. And my family said,
Nice.
he didn't get to come home with us. And I remember telling them he was never going to come home with us. But I was pumping in the SPCA parking lot while my family was getting a dog. So,
Oh my goodness. That's so funny. So I'm
yeah.
sure they want you to be a surrogate again so they can
Yeah.
get another dog.
Yes. Well, that ship has sailed, most certainly.
That's so funny. That's so funny. I really appreciate your time, Katie. Are there any other pieces of information that you think people should know about, particularly people who feel worried about surrogacy? I think, certainly for gay men, this is probably a little more comfortable than for a woman who's had multiple losses. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of that too. Are there things that you feel that you're seeing that people need to be aware of?
I think more than anything, it's just education. it is knowing from both sides why you're going into this process. I think for parents, understanding that someone does really want to help you at the end of the day, and being comfortable that this is the path that you go down. When from an agency perspective, when we have issues, it's usually because that grief hasn't been processed yet, that this is that next
Mhm.
right step. And there's great platforms and people like yourself and wonderful books that
Mhm.
can be read, and support groups as well. And I think it's just really important to process through this decision. I know a lot of families are pretty much given agency names and like, well, you need a surrogate, or well, you need an egg donor, go. And really deciding if this is not, it might be the path, but it's probably not, it's not the only path to parenthood, or to adding to your family. So feeling comfortable with that decision. And from a surrogate perspective or an egg donor perspective, it's education as well. I think there is the misconception that women get into this process to make a little bit of money, or it's simple, or it's easy, and really knowing it's not. It's an investment of time and energy,
Yes.
effort. There is risk involved in this process as well. I have found that it was worth it, that what happened on the back end was worth it, to go through some of the things that we went through. And I don't talk to very many surrogates or families that regret their decision to go down this path as well, because typically there's a beautiful baby at the end of it, but oftentimes there's a beautiful added relationship that comes at the end of it as well.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And even though some parents go into this feeling like that's not what they want,
Yeah.
in the end, they often don't know how close they'll get for with the surrogate and with her partner and maybe with the family. They often don't realize how close they can get and what that experience is like to share the pregnancy with another
Yeah.
person. It's a very unique experience and one that's very different than what we see out there where people feel like women are being taken advantage of. This is obviously something that people do with their full hearts.
Yes, most certainly.
Well, that's great, Katie. Thank you so much for coming. Is there a place where people can reach out to you?
Yes, you can find us online at Create a Happy Family. That's our URL as well as handle on Instagram and TikTok. We also have a podcast, Me, You, and Who, that we so graciously, you have been a guest on our podcast. And that is another great
Mhm.
way to hear inspiring stories as well as just education on this process as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lisa. It was great to talk with you.
And thank you for all of you who are out there and spending time with us. It's so important to get the right information and really not listen to all the noise that's out there. There's a lot of good information out there and lots of good ways to build your family. So come back next week and learn more. I was so happy to have you here, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this was helpful to you. And if you'd like more personalized support, more information, and more education, you can find it in the show notes under the Building Your Family community. We'd love to see you inside. And if you were interested in today's topic, you will really like this video.